You are sitting by a fire. The smoke drips into your face, you squint, wave it away, and shift slightly to the side. And for just a moment, without quite knowing why, you feel something ancient and comfortable in it. Something that does not belong to this evening, or this backyard, or this decade. That feeling is not nostalgia. It is memory, and it is more than 1,000,000 years old. Long before the first cigarette, long before the first pipe, long before any human being thought to deliberately press a burning plant to their lips and inhale, your ancestors were already breathing smoke every single day of their lives. The story of how that became intentional, ritualized, and eventually global is one of the stranger and more human threads woven through the entire history of your species. So, when did ancient humans start smoking? The answer is older and stranger than almost anything you have been told. Let us start with fire. In 2012, a team led by archaeologist Francesco Berna published findings in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences from a site called Wonderwork Cave in the northern Cape of South Africa. Inside that cave, buried in ash layers dating back roughly 1,000,000 years, they found evidence of controlled burning, charred animal bone fragments, burnt plant material, the unmistakable signature of a managed fire deep inside an enclosed space. 1,000,000 years ago. This was not Homo sapiens. This was your earlier ancestor, Homo erectus, keeping a fire alive inside a cave. Think carefully about what that means. The moment your ancestors began maintaining fire indoors, they began inhaling smoke. Every night, every cold season, every meal cooked over open flame meant a column of smoke rising into the same enclosed air they were sleeping and waking inside. For hundreds of thousands of years before agriculture, before pottery, before any invention you can name, smoke was not an occasional irritant. It was the smell of shelter, the smell of safety. Your lungs evolved inside it. Your respiratory system adapted to smoke the way it adapted to running or to cold. Not because smoke is harmless, it is not, but because fire was the price of survival, and survival always wins. But that is passive smoke, the kind you endure. What about the kind you seek? Somewhere deep in the human past, at a moment we cannot precisely identify, someone noticed that certain plants produced more than warmth and light when burned. Certain dried roots, certain resins, certain flowers released something else, a smell that was sharper, a heaviness behind the eyes, a loosening of the chest that did not come from ordinary air. Whether this was wild cannabis drifting over a communal fire, aromatic herbs placed deliberately on coals, or the residue of psychoactive fungi burning in embers, the effect was noticed, and it was not forgotten. The Harvard botanist and anthropologist Richard Evans Schultes spent decades, beginning in the 1940s, documenting ritual use of psychoactive plants across South America. His fieldwork reached cultures in the Amazon, the Andes, and the lowland rainforests. What he found again and again was the same pattern: carefully maintained plant knowledge, passed between generations, embedded in ceremony. Smoke was not casual in these traditions. It was purposeful, a technology, a way of marking time as significant, of crossing a boundary between ordinary life and something the community agreed was more serious. Schultes argued, based on everything he documented, that intentional psychoactive plant use almost certainly predates agriculture, perhaps by tens of thousands of years. But we are not limited to living traditions. We can go underground. In 2019, a team of researchers led by archaeologist Yimin Yang published findings from excavations at the Jirsankal Cemetery in the eastern Pamir Mountains of western China. The site dated to roughly 500 BCE, about 2,500 years ago. Inside wooden braziers found within the burial chambers, the team identified chemical residues of cannabis with unusually elevated concentrations of tetrahydrocannabinol, the compound that produces psychoactive effects. This was not hemp being grown for rope or cloth. The chemical signature pointed to deliberately selected high-potency plants burned in enclosed ritual spaces, almost certainly to produce effects that the living could experience during the burial ceremony. The smoke was the point. Someone chose these plants specifically because of what their smoke did. 2,500 years ago, in Central Asia, more than a millennium before tobacco reached Europe. But even cannabis was not the beginning. Tobacco is almost certainly older in terms of deliberate human use, because the cultures that developed it had millennia to do so before the rest of the world learned it existed. The tobacco plant is native to the Americas. Chemical analyses of ancient pipe residues from North American archaeological sites have confirmed tobacco use dating back at least 3,000 years, and the signatures of cultivation suggest a far longer process of human selection and refinement. The anthropologist Johannes Wilbert, who spent years studying tobacco shamanism among the Wado people of Venezuela and other groups across the Amazon basin, documented traditions so tightly woven into spiritual and social life that they bear every sign of being ancient beyond what written record can confirm. In these traditions, tobacco was not a pleasure, it was not a habit, it was a medium, a way of entering a state of consciousness that the community recognized was necessary for certain kinds of knowledge or communication. The shaman who could hold more smoke held more authority. Nicotine, as a molecule, is, in this light, a remarkable evolutionary accident. It binds to the same receptor sites in the brain as acetylcholine, one of the nervous system's primary signaling chemicals. It sharpens focus, it reduces anxiety at low doses, it creates, almost immediately, a sense of alert calm. Your brain does not experience nicotine as a foreign substance, it experiences it as something very close to itself. Is it any surprise that the first human to breathe it in and feel that sharpening did not simply walk away? So let's reconstruct the scene. It is roughly 3,000 years ago. The sun has gone down over the river valleys of what will one day be called the southeastern United States. A small group has gathered in a wooden structure, low and warm. Someone is tending a clay pipe packed with dried tobacco. The smoke rises and passes between hands. Each person who breathes in feels a slow narrowing of the world. Not intoxication, not impairment, but presence. A quiet sharpening. What follows over the next hour is a conversation about territory and season, and the children that will be born, and the elders that are dying. The pipe travels the circle again. The smoke is not the subject. The smoke is the frame. A signal to the brain and to everyone in the room that what is happening right now matters, that this is not ordinary time. This is how deliberate smoking worked for most of its history. Not as a habit, not as a daily craving, but as a ritual boundary marker, a technology for attention, a shared agreement that something significant was being entered. Here's the counterintuitive truth, and it's important. The thing that makes smoking so destructive in the modern world is not ancient. The compulsive daily repetition, the 20 cigarettes before noon, the low, restless itch that follows a smoker through every hour of the day, that pattern is extremely recent. For most of human history, psychoactive smoke was used sparingly by specific people, in specific roles, at specific times of the year, or at specific moments of social significance. The ritual model of tobacco use did not produce the addiction profile that modern tobacco does. The cigarette as an object, compact, mass-produced, optimized to deliver a precise dose of nicotine in under 10 minutes, is an industrial invention roughly 300 years old. It did not create the human appetite for smoke. It found an appetite that was already ancient and fed it continuously, without pause or ceremony, until the original purpose dissolved and only the craving was left. What the cigarette industry understood, perhaps without fully intending to, is that something in your nervous system has always been oriented towards smoke. Fire built the context for your social bonding. Smoke saturated your evolutionary environment for 1,000,000 years. The ritual use of psychoactive plants followed naturally once your ancestors' cognitive range was wide enough to notice patterns in plant effects and preserve that knowledge. Each layer is older than the one that came after it. Your pull toward a campfire is not sentiment. It is memory stored in the body. The warmth, the light, the specific smell of burning wood in the dark. Your nervous system reads all of this as safety and familiarity before your conscious mind processes it as pleasant. That response is not nostalgia. It is 1,000,000 years old. It lived in the creature who tended a fire inside Wonderwork Cave before your species had a name. Smoke has been in your lungs for longer than language has been in your mouth. Long before anyone made a choice to inhale it, your ancestors were already shaped by it. And when the first person picked up a burning plant and chose, deliberately, intentionally, to bring its smoke inside themselves, they were not doing something alien or reckless. They were doing what humans have always done. Looking for a way to step outside of ordinary time, to mark a moment as worth attending to gather in the smoke with the people they loved, and feel, for a few shared breaths, that something larger than daily life was present. That instinct never left you. You are still sitting by the fire.